The world is still reeling from the impacts of the coronavirus, and the United States appears to be in a state of civil unrest. Following the viral video showcasing the killing of a black man named George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota, protests erupted across several cities in America. Just a few weeks ago, there was public outcry over the killing of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. Black people in America are frustrated, angry and tired. Nearly 3 months of a global lockdown combined with the disproportionate amount of black people impacted by COVID-19, the mass unemployment that tens of millions are facing, and the structural and systemic racism experienced in nearly every facet of life is a disastrous combination. The wounds of America's past never quite healed and are revealed for the world to see. Many people are looking for answers and a better understanding of how to fight against racism, injustice and societal inequities. Anti-racism education and resources are greatly needed. Monique Melton is an educator, speaker, and podcast host who facilitates important discussions on anti-racism and diversity. Monique sat down with Forbes to discuss her career trajectory, her racial equity work, and how she is helping people to identify and eliminate their racism.
Janice Gassam, could you share a little bit about your background with the Forbes readers? How did you get into doing these anti-racism workshops?
Monique Melton, I have been an entrepreneur for most of my life. I started my journey in entrepreneurship when I was an undergrad as a makeup artist. I did that for about a decade, and once I became a mother, I wanted something I could do from home and I could use the skills that I had gained over time. I started doing brand and business development and working with small businesses to help them grow and develop their businesses. In that process I was also raising little black children, so it was working with these primarily white businesses who really didn't have a full grasp on what it took to build a business that was inclusive and diverse, and also the realization of being black in America and raising black children and seeing my son, in particular, growing up during the time where we had a lot of the publicized shootings of unarmed black men. Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, and so there was working with the clients, the realization of raising black children in America, and seeing that there is this glaring undeniable target on our backs, and so I decided that I would shift gears in my business. About 13 years ago I was at my church service, and a guest pastor came in and, his prophecy over me was that I would bridge the gap between black and white. Fast forward and I think back to grieving these atrocities, especially Ferguson, because that was close to home. I'm from St. Louis, grieving that and feeling like I need to do more with my voice and my work. My education background is in sociology and psychology. I studied these things. I wrote a paper in college on white privilege. I had a knowledge base and understanding, combining being a black mother to black children with the realization of the prophecy over me. I decided that I would focus my business on anti-racism.
Gassam, how do you move people to change their beliefs? There's a lot of skepticism and a lot of doubt, and many who think that these workshops will not help people unlearn behaviors. Where do you begin? How do you get people ripe for change?
Melton, one of the things that I do is I release myself from the expectation to change people. I know for certain that that is something that I cannot do. I can present the information, I can share ideas and facilitate and cultivate experiences that will enlighten people and give them the opportunity to do the work within themselves. But I took the expectation away from myself of I have to change people, because it feels too impossible. It would be dehumanizing of myself to think that that was possible for me to do. One of the things that I do in my work is, I do a lot of educating around what does anti-racism actually mean. A lot of times people hear the word and there's a knee-jerk reaction. Racism is almost like a cuss word for some people. The thing is, I talk very explicitly, I talk very clearly, and I talk very specifically about what we are dealing with. It begins to remove the taboo around being honest about race and being honest about the beliefs that you have. I have a lot of information that I share with them. I break it up into tools of identifying and eliminating. We can't eliminate something that we don't know how to identify, and we can't identify something that we don't call out and say what it is. A lot of it is being very straightforward and honest from the beginning. I let them know that this is not an intellectual endeavor. I am sharing with you lived experiences. I'm sharing with you information to help you unlearn. These aren't open for debate. It helps people go from this place of being critical to being open to listen and learn. When you get to that place where you're willing to listen and learn, then you can remove some of the defenses that you're going to have up when you're uprooting beliefs. Uprooting beliefs is exhausting, it's painful, it's hard, and so one of the things I teach is that any time you want to uproot a belief, you've got to give yourself evidence to ground the belief you want to hold on to, and then collect evidence for that belief. Just because they want to believe something different doesn't mean they will right away. I put the burden on them. This is your responsibility to do. The white collective has never done this work. Your legacy is one that you can disrupt, but you have to choose to.
Gassam, on your website you have a phrase, unity over comfort. Could you explain to the readers what this idea entails?
Melton, so the idea of unity over comfort came from, I was being interviewed for a podcast and I just made the statement when we were talking, everything about white supremacy is familiar for white people, it's comfortable. In order to move to a place of unity it requires a lot of digging and discomfort and being in positions where you're confused or frustrated. It's going to require doing things that you're not used to, so there's going to be anxiety and fear. It's a lot of discomfort. It's going to take a commitment to unity, a commitment of healing from the dehumanization of white supremacy. It's going to take a commitment to repairing the harm that has been done in 400+ years of legalized and racialized terror against black folks. It's going to take repairing the harm and doing the work to end the violence. None of that is comfortable. It's going to take the commitment to unity over doing what's comfortable and what's easy, which is perpetuating white supremacy. You don't have to deliberately go out and call someone the N-word or go burn a cross on someone's porch in order for you to perpetuate white supremacy. It's much more pervasive than that. It's going to take a lot of discomfort, a lot of asking questions and being honest, dealing with your feelings that come up. It's not about how you feel about this work, it's about you doing the work and sticking with it, despite how uncomfortable it is.
Gassam, I see you have a podcast called the Shine Brighter Together podcast. What was the catalyst to you starting the podcast and what do you want listeners to get out of the podcast?
Melton, I wanted to have a place where I could talk about anti-racism and talk about the experiences that different folks who come from different marginalized communities go through and do it in a way that felt very real and honest, but also give practical ways to apply what we're talking about. I did an episode once on the film When They See Us. I actually interviewed my son, who's only in grade school. I want to normalize the conversation of race and remove some of the taboo and just letting folks know that these are conversations that you need to have, and hopefully when you listen to podcast you might get some words and some phrases to share with your friends and family. But most importantly I wanted black folks to feel seen and heard and acknowledged. What you're going through is real. It's not just you, what you're experiencing. It's a combination of wanting my folks to be heard and our voices to be amplified, and also realizing that my audience is primarily white and so wanting them to hear these stories and wanting them to take action.
Gassam, for anyone reading this who wants to do the work, how can they work with you? What are some of the different offerings you have to help a person dismantle their racism?
Melton, I've put together a crash course on anti-racism because there was such an influx of people wanting to know. The way that my work is that it's built out in tiers. The first tier that I offer, everything has a reference to light. I call them Shine classes, and they're anywhere from 60 to 90-minute classes where there's a specific topic on anti-racism. I'd offer them live. People can sign up for them and then I'd put them in my shop for people to purchase later. That's a really great entry point. It's a very short time commitment. It's a hyper-focused topic and it's a lot of practical next steps. That's my style of teaching. I'm always trying to give people tools to apply what they are learning. The second level is the Shine box, and that is the set of tools for anti-racism. So, if you think about cooking, you have to know the difference between a knife and a spatula and how to use them. That's my goal with the Shine box, to help people know how to navigate anti-racism and to avoid causing more harm in the process. A lot of people just fumble their way through it, and if they had a more formalized approach to understanding what anti-racism is, I believe they would cause less harm. After that, there's the Unity Over Comfort program, and that's like my baby. That is the place where a lot of transformation happens. It is where we build on these tools. We actually talk about them in more detail and get more specific, and this is where we're doing a lot of interacting and asking questions. It's about applying the tools and understanding them further and getting practice with them. I created a Unity over Comfort 2.0. I think about 2.0 because this is where there's a lot of increased accountability. We're reading books every single week. I am giving them homework, specific calls to action. It's an intense level of accountability. It's another level of growth. You go from learning, processing, critical thinking to applying. I'm asking them, how did you perpetuate racism this week? How did you disarm yourself? This is the place where we're rolling up the sleeves and digging in.
To learn more about Monique's anti-racism work and the courses and resources she offers, click here.
This interview has been lightly edited for clarity and brevity.